Hello and welcome to Arnie's Short Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. I'm going to try and upload a new story each day. Haunted Havenstreet. The Isle of Wight had always been a patchwork of quiet lanes and whispering woods, but none held as much mystery as Havenstreet. The old steam railway, now mostly a tourist attraction, had seen its share of visitors marvelling at its vintage charm. But few knew its darker past, a past Holly Arnold was about to uncover. It was a damp October evening when Holly found herself at Havenstreet station. The air was thick with the scent of rain-soaked earth and old iron. The platform stretched into the fog, its edges blurred as though the world beyond didn't exist. She clutched her notebook tightly. As a freelance journalist, Holly had a knack for sniffing out stories, and the rumors of ghost trains running on the old line had drawn her here. The station's ticket office was dimly lit, its interior a tableau of vintage clocks, timetables, and faded posters advertising excursions from decades past. The station master, a wiry old man with piercing blue eyes, handed her a single ticket without a word. "Thanks," Holly said. The ink date was smudged, but the time read 11:15 p.m. She looked up to ask about the peculiar lateness, but the man had vanished as though swallowed by the mist. The sound of an approaching train rumbled through the fog. Holly turned toward the tracks just as an ancient steam engine emerged, its headlamp a single glaring eye cutting through the darkness. It screeched to a halt, and the carriages once pristine were weathered, their windows opaque with grime. Yet the doors opened, inviting her aboard. The journey begins. Holly hesitated. She had come for a story, and every instinct told her this was it. She stepped inside the carriage, her boots echoing on the wooden floor. The interior smelled of coal smoke and mildew, and the seats were upholstered in threadbare velvet. She chose a corner seat, placing her notebook on her lap. The train lurched forward, and Holly peered out the window. The station disappeared into the mist as the train picked up speed, its rhythmic clatter the only sound in the eerie silence. She noticed other passengers scattered throughout the carriages, their features blurred in the dim gaslight. They sat unnaturally still, their faces turned away from her. "Excuse me." He didn't respond. She edged closer, and her breath caught. His skin was pale and waxy, his eyes sunk in hollows. A chill ran down her spine as she realized the man wasn't alive. The train jolted violently, throwing Holly back into her seat. The gas lights flickered, and the once muted murmurs of the passengers turned to guttural whispers. She gripped the edge of her seat, her pulse racing. The ghostly tale unfolds. The whispers coalesced into voices, telling a story of fire and metal. Years ago, a catastrophic accident had claimed the lives of dozens of railway workers and passengers. The train, overloaded and running late, had derailed on a sharp bend, plunging into a ravine. The engine had exploded on impact, engulfing the wreckage in flames. Many were trapped, their screams echoing through the night. As the voices spoke, the train's atmosphere shifted. The walls seemed to bleed rust, and the air grew suffocatingly hot. Holly clutched her notebook, scribbling furiously, though her hands trembled. She felt the train accelerating, the vibrations rattling her teeth. Suddenly, the whispers stopped. The train screeched to a halt, and Holly was thrown forward. When she looked up, she was no longer inside the carriage, but standing on the edge of a vast, fiery chasm. The twisted remains of a train smoldered below, and ghostly figures moved through the wreckage. Their faces were frozen in expressions of agony, their hands outstretched as if begging for help. One figure, a young man in a scorched uniform, approached her. His voice was a hollow echo. "We were forgotten." Holly nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Well, I will." The figure pointed to her notebook. "Write our story." The return. The chasm dissolved, and Holly found herself back in the carriage. The train was silent now, the passengers gone. She glanced at her watch, 11:14 p.m. The train pulled into Havenstreet station, and Holly stumbled out, her legs weak. The platform was deserted, the station master nowhere in sight. She looked down at her notebook. The pages were filled with detailed accounts of the accident, names of the victims, and the events leading to the disaster. None of it was in her handwriting. Holly left Havenstreet that night with her story, but she carried more than words. The ghosts of the railway workers followed her, their whispers a constant reminder of her promise. And every so often she would hear the distant whistle of a train echoing through the fog, calling her back to Havenstreet. Haunted by the past. Over the following weeks, Holly poured herself into writing the article. She visited archives, interviewed locals, and pieced together every fragment of the railway's history. A piece titled "The Forgotten of Havenstreet" became an instant sensation, shedding light on the long-buried tragedy. But as Holly's story gained attention, strange things began happening. The distant whistle of a train echoed in her ears even in broad daylight. Her apartment grew unnaturally cold, and shadows flitted in her peripheral vision. Her laptop flickered when she worked, displaying fragments of old railway schedules she'd never researched. One night, she woke to the sound of grinding metal and hissing steam. Her room was bathed in an eerie glow, and when she looked out her window, she saw the ghostly train idling on the street below. The scorched man in the uniform stood on the platform, his hollow eyes fixed on her. "And you wrote our story," he said. "But it is not enough?" Holly asked, her voice trembling. The word hung in the air like a verdict. Those who profited from our deaths must pay, bring the truth to light. Before she could respond, the train vanished, leaving only the faint scent of coal smoke. Holly knew she couldn't ignore the ghost's plea. She began digging deeper, uncovering a web of negligence and greed. The railway company had ignored safety warnings to meet deadlines, leading to the fatal crash. Many of the victims' families had been silenced with hush money, their stories erased from official records. A final reckoning. Holly's investigation culminated in a scathing exposé that named names and demanded accountability. The piece reignited public outrage, leading to an official inquiry. The descendants of the victims received long overdue recognition and compensation, and the railway's management faced legal repercussions. The night the inquiry concluded, Holly returned to Havenstreet station. The platform was bathed in moonlight, and the air was still. As the clock struck 11:15 p.m., the ghostly train appeared once more. Holly boarded without hesitation. Inside, the passengers were no longer silent. They smiled at her, their features soft and human again. The young man in the uniform approached her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Then you kept your promise." As the train pulled away, Holly felt an overwhelming sense of peace. When it disappeared into the mist, she was left standing alone on the platform, her notebook in hand. The pages were blank, save for one line written in elegant script, "Thank you." Holly smiled and walked away, the whistle of the train fading into the distance. The ghosts of Havenstreet were gone, but their story would live on forever. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please don't forget to like, and even better, like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and I hope you have had or have a great day.